All right, let's see. I got a new phone here, guys, so bear with me. It says I can't rotate my phone while recording, so maybe we gotta leave it like that. Weird. My last one I rotated. Anyway, welcome back to another episode of our weekly Wednesday live Q&A. This week, we are going to talk about the eventualities of contest prep. So what are some of these eventualities? Things like potential injuries, weak immune system, poor sleep, hunger, irritability. So we're going to cover all these, cover some ways to try to overcome them. But like I said, there's really not a ton that we can actually avoid. So we're going to dive right into it as always. We had people ask a few questions, but I do have my notes here. And Ben, I see you giving me all the hearts in the world. I appreciate you, brother. I took some notes on some subjects that I personally wanted to cover. So we're going to go into those. Obviously, if anybody has any additional things that they'd like me to touch on, feel free to go ahead and ask. But we're just going to get right to it. So Ben started us off. He said, I guess we'll just start with the first point. Ben said injuries. And then I guess how to deal with training in a caloric deficit. So I'll do those two hand in hand because I feel like they're important to do together. Now, I had this conversation the other day with one of my clients. They said they are very fatigued, a little bit run down. They said that they are dealing with a nagging injury. And I knew what they had been doing. They were trying to get a little bit too creative with their training, incorporating drop sets, supersets, plus sets, and they are about 8 weeks out from their competition. This person may be watching right now, so I don't want to name them per se. But what I basically said was cut the shit and stop trying to be cute, because we know that our recovery is not as good during a caloric deficit, right? Now's not the time to be trying to overload your body in a contest prep. So ideally, what I would like to see is you train that way in the off season when your calories are higher, when your recovery is better. You could train drop sets, supersets, all that kind of stuff all day, every day. In contest prep, you have to use it sparingly. Why? Because if you start doing that, that's when the injuries can come. So for instance, today, my personal training, I trained back today, but I made the decision not to pull sumo because from training on Monday, I tweaked my left glute a little bit. My left glute has been bothering me for a while, on and off. Some weeks it's fine, some weeks it hurts to stand. And I knew that if I were to pull sumo today that I would hurt myself. So what did I do? I rack pulled. On Instagram, I'm going to put up a video later on it. Wasn't anything crazy. I worked up to 365, but my glute was fine. So when you're in contest prep, you have to be smart with your decision making on what exercises you could get away with. I knew today if I were to pull sumo at the weight that I wanted, that I was supposed to, I would hurt myself. Could I have potentially ended my contest prep? Could have, but I was smart enough not to do it. So I guess you just have to realize that your recovery is poor, that you're more injury prone because you're in a fatigue state, and you need to select your exercises accordingly. Now, I know that some people swear that they have to follow their plan to a T, but we all know that sometimes in contest prep, you have to make changes on the fly. And not that this was a surprise change for me today, having to do rack pulls, because in my programs in weeks previous, I've had to do the exact same thing, so I already knew that going into today. And in the back of my mind, as soon as I woke up today, actually, I knew I was going to rack pull because I got out of bed and I was like, oh man, my glute, deads aren't happening today. So I prevented further injury, and once again, another successful week in the books of contest prep in regards to my training. Now, Ben, secondly, asked, dealing with sickness during prep. Now, the summertime's not necessarily as prevalent, I guess, at least for me. I don't necessarily get sick during the summer. It's more or less like spring and winter for me, basically when the seasons are changing a lot. But what you can do is obviously just making sure that you're getting enough vitamin C and everything. But I would recommend supplementing zinc, magnesium, and vitamin D, just to help, boost your immune system, as much as you possibly can. And Joe, I see Nate, thanks for tuning in. So that way we could, try to boost our immune system. And one other thing, and I sound like a mother saying this, but wash your damn hands, like, when you're at the gym. Like, it's a dirty place. The gyms are one of the dirtiest places, like, you could possibly be, just because all the sweat and all the people going in there, and they're all touching all the dumbbells and shit. Like, that's one major way that you could, try to stay healthy, is just washing your damn hands when you're at the gym, when you leave the gym, when you get home from the gym. Like, it's simple, but I feel like a lot of people skip that step on their health. Now, Lydia wanted me to talk about decreased strength and having to modify training programs. So, although I just talked about modifying specific lifts, Lydia wants me to cover more or less like just how to deal with strength loss. So, once again, an inevitability of contest prep is strength loss in general. Why does that happen, though? For those of you, obviously, who maybe you don't know the answer, but what's happening is when we are in a caloric deficit for a very, very extended period of time, we lose muscle mass. Obviously, when you lose muscle mass, you're going to lose strength because you're just losing that muscle. That muscle is not as strong as it once was. So we're going to lose some strength along the way. But here's what we can do, and here's what you could try to do to fight it as long as you possibly can. Still stick with some major movers, right? So like I was just saying, right now, some days I deadlift, other days I rack pull. Still a major movement. It's still getting the job done for me. Now, in my past contest preps, I remember specifically like pulling my squat because it was too heavy. I remember pulling my bench once again because it was just too heavy. It was uncomfortable. I don't squat right now and I don't bench. I didn't do either of those really too much in the off season anyway. But my main squat movement is my hack squat. And my main chest movement is basically my like hammer strength press, and those will remain in there for as long as I can, pretty much through the end of contest prep, because you can modify those weights easier. I would still try to lift as heavy as possible in a contest prep, because if you're lifting heavy, that's going to ensure that you try to sustain as much muscle as possible. What some people try to do is they only like lift in the high rep ranges, and that's kind of silly because you're just going to eventually turn into like cardio lifting, and you're just going to end up burning through more muscle. Like some people do like 30 to 40 reps, which I just feel like that's just overkill. I mean, doing a 30 rep set every now and then is totally fine, but if you're going anywhere above that, like you just need to up the weight. So yes, you can modify the training a little bit, but still try to fight for strength. Don't just give up. For instance, today, like when I did rack pull instead of deadlift, I did dial my weights back because, at least for me, rack pull is a little bit harder. I get a lot of momentum and a lot of speed off the ground, so I'm actually a little bit weaker in a rack pull than I am on a deadlift, which is very, very odd. It just has to do with my leverages. I'm very, very comfortable with sumo. Just sumo wasn't going to happen for me today, so I did dial the weight back slightly, but still went heavy in comparison for my rack pulls. I mean, I still rack pulled 365 today, so as opposed to deadlifting like 385 or 395 like I was supposed to. Holly asked food sensitivities when options are limited during prep. And I think what Holly's getting at here, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Holly's on here, is that when we get down into prep, especially people who get very, very low calories and their macros get low, there's only so much food that we could choose from. And it might be, limiting resources. So for instance, like if your macros are at like 50 grams of carbs a day, like there's not a whole lot that you could choose from to fill 50 grams of carbs. Like you're either going to be eating like some kind of green, obviously, green beans, spinach, broccoli, zucchini, anything like that. And obviously if like one of those foods or a couple of those foods bother you, like you might have to just stick with one or two. And that's unfortunate, but understand like you're not going to have to be on that food for forever. You know, hopefully it's only like a month or two. Like if you were to literally have to select one or two of those foods just to stick to. So you just try to tough it out. You know, when your macros get low. Obviously, when everybody's macros get low, it's tough to hit those numbers, especially when they are so low that you don't have much to choose from. I see you, Connor. Julie asked, not being able to sleep well through the night. So once again, this is one of these eventualities. Sleep goes down, right? I mean, I'm definitely feeling it. Like, my wife will tell you, I'm up. I go to bed roughly at 10 o'clock every night. I probably wake up to go to the bathroom like at 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. Some days I go back to sleep. Some days I do not go back to sleep. So that kind of sucks. And that just sets you up for more fatigue throughout the day. Is there anything that you could do to manage that? Well, Ben, as Ben typically does, he's a little bit smart on the comments here, but Ben did say to recommend taking Core Z's. As you guys might have saw the other day in my core order, I did get Core Z's, which is our sleep aid. I haven't taken it yet just because I'm not at the point where I want to take it. Because my sleep has been alright. It hasn't been great, it hasn't been shit. But when my sleep starts to go to shit, that's when I'll start taking Core Z's as a sleep aid. But for example, myself, at least right now, what I've been trying to do, at least on the days where I know I'm not getting quality sleep, is sometime in the afternoon, usually, let's say like around like 2 or 3 o'clock, after I'm done training, I cool down for a bit, have my protein shake, and I'll actually just like shut my eyes for like, 5-10 minutes just to relax, or just like turn the lights down, don't look at my phone, don't look at my computer, just chill out, relax, and just gather myself. So that's a way of like recouping a little bit of energy, de-stressing a little bit. I did that today again, and afterwards I felt great. So that's one thing that you could kind of help manage your poor stress along the way, is taking those 10-15 minute breaks where you're literally doing nothing but shutting your mind down mid-afternoon or whenever, just to help you kind of relax a little bit so you could feel better throughout the day. And I'll tell you what, after I did that, I did feel a lot better, and I feel like I'm functioning okay right now. But what we're going to do now is we're going to get into a few of the topics that I personally wanted to cover, just because I did leave this one kind of open-ended. It wasn't necessarily like a set topic. It's just going to be more of like almost like a YouTube video of just me talking. But if you guys want to go ahead, and if you want me to cover anything else in this video, go ahead and shoot it down in the comments. But I'm going to get into my list. So we already talked about injuries. We already talked about weak immune system. We talked about strength decreases already, and poor sleep. I feel like this one is a no-brainer, but for first-time competitors out there, they just don't understand how much it hits you, and that's hunger. Like, it may sound stupid, especially like coming from me. I feel like I fairly talk like high-level stuff, but if you're going to be in a contest prep, like, you're gonna be hungry. And it's not just like, oh man, I really can eat. Like, you're going to be ravenous. Like, you're going to want to eat your pantry eventually. Like, you're going to be chugging down gallons of water to fill your stomach, even though that's not necessarily going to work. But you're going to try everything and anything to keep from being so hungry. You're going to be so hungry at night that you're not going to sleep well. We already talked about poor sleep. And that's one thing I think a lot of people just aren't prepared for, is the amount of hunger that you actually feel. There's points, and it's common, and it's kind of bad to say, but like sometimes you're so hungry, like you're dizzy, you're lightheaded, obviously like you have low blood sugar, and it's not necessarily the best feeling in the world, and a lot of people end up quitting contest prep because they just can't handle being hungry all day. And it kind of sucks because we know that we're doing this to ourselves, right? Like, we're essentially starving ourselves under control. And that's just not fun. Like, our body doesn't appreciate that. So the inevitability of contest prep is, once again, you're going to be hungry as shit. And if you're a first-time competitor, this is going to be the hungriest that you've ever been in your life. And it doesn't get easier. This is my, fourth time prepping, and I'm still as hungry as I ever was. I'm just more mentally prepared for it this time around. So when I do feel like shit, like I was kind of midday today, I was like, oh man, like I'm feeling it, low energy. I just know it's part of the process. And when I feel really, really bad like that, the next day, and this is what kind of helps me get through it at least, the next day I always have like a really big low weigh-in. So tomorrow we're gonna see what my weight is. I expect it to be in the 175s. I've been at 176 or hovering around 176 for the past few days. So tomorrow I definitely expect a big drop, and I'll make sure to put that up on Instagram. So that is hunger. Irritability. This is the big one, especially for me. Usually I'm a very nice guy. At least I try to be. But I get very irritable over the stupidest things. I mean, somebody looks at me wrong in the gym, and if my boy Genesis is watching this, he's the powerlifter that some of you on Instagram at least know, that I have in some of my gym footage and all that. And like somebody looks at me wrong, and I'll just be pissed at them. Like I want to tear their face off. And they just may be looking at me because like I'm setting up my tripod to take like footage or whatever, and it's not their fault, it's my fault. Like literally you look at me wrong and like I wanna kick you in the teeth. And that's not me normally. Like I feel normally I wouldn't mind. But in contest prep, you just gotta try to keep it under control, but know that sometimes you just get more irritable than others. And let's see what Connor said here. Gotta ask yourself in those moments, what would Dougie do? He would crush it. Yeah, okay, Connor. So yeah, I mean, controlling your irritability, controlling your anger is definitely easier said than done. And realize that some people have it worse than others. But with being hungry, you're gonna be more irritable. It kind of comes hand in hand. We talked about muscle loss. Obviously, it's kind of part of the natural process. But let's talk about some ways to slow muscle loss, because I just don't want to talk about what's going to happen to you. I want to talk about ways to try to slow things down at least to make things easier. So muscle loss is inevitable, like I said earlier, when we are in a deficit. But there's some ways that we could overcome muscle loss. I already talked about one, and that's still training with as much intensity as possible and as heavy as possible within reason. Barring any injury, so you don't hurt yourself. But another way is just controlling your rate of loss. So obviously we want to control the amount of pounds per week that we lose. Doing so will ensure that we don't lose a ton of muscle, because if you're dropping like 3 pounds a week, I know that may seem like an extreme, but those 3 pounds are probably not all going to be fat. A half a pound or a pound might be muscle, and a half a pound of muscle is a crazy amount. I'm not saying that people do that. I'm not saying that's necessarily possible, but if you're really pushing the pounds per week, muscle loss is going to be inevitable, especially if you have it so big. Another thing obviously is just like making sure you have enough protein in, just to make sure that we are repairing those cells that we were breaking down, because I did mention this earlier that our recovery is just not as good as it is in the off season, because the calories aren't there. So we want to make sure that we're intaking enough protein to help, or at least try to help repair our cells. And at the end of the day, like, we're not necessarily going to be fully recovered from every single workout that we do. That is just one of the inevitabilities of a contest prep. Your body just doesn't have time to heal. It doesn't have the energy to heal completely. So some days you're going to be running on 75% efficiency. Like I trained legs on Monday, my hamstrings and glutes were still fatigued today, and I have to train legs tomorrow. It's going to be more quad focused, but still my legs are still fatigued. I don't necessarily know if I recover from any single workout, maybe a smaller muscle group like chest and shoulders. I feel like I recover from those, arms, abs, but my major muscle groups like back and legs, I just feel like I honestly don't recover, because I do train things twice every week now. And the recovery time is just not there. I recently switched my program to back to training things twice a week, just because I wanted to up my frequency. I was out of town for a little bit, so I did change my training style up. But since I'm back in town now, not doing as much traveling, once again, I do want to try to optimize responsibly my training program in my contest prep. I'm not doing anything extraordinary. I'm just going back to basically what I did through the length of my off season. Let's see here. My next, I guess poor recovery and fatigue we just touched on as well. Another one, and you guys might be noticing this from watching these videos, obviously like I'm taking notes, is mental fogginess or brain fogginess. My mental clarity is still fine. It's okay, but it's not what it is in the off season. I get confused more. I'm looking for words more. I just can't put sentences together like I did before. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because I still feel like I speak somewhat eloquently. At least I think so. But I'm looking, it's just hard to put sentences together sometimes. Like you're not there, you're zoned out. Like if someone's talking to me, like my attention span just isn't there. Like it's hard for me to explain, but it's just like I'm like my body is present, but my mind isn't. Maybe some of you guys get that, and you just kind of like drift away, and you just kind of zone out. And that's what I would consider like mental fogginess. And some of you guys who follow me on Instagram or follow Genesis on Instagram knows that he always makes fun of me for leaving my shit in the gym. So like today he picked up like my weight belt. Yesterday somebody turned in my headphones. You know, I've left my training log. Today I almost walked off without my phone. He's like, dude, you're gonna grab your phone? Because it's just like you're just not thinking the same way that you do in your off season. And I know I'm not the only one that struggles with that. Now, one thing that has helped me though is the clients that I do have, right? So me having so many clients, like it makes me focus. And I have to be there for them, and I have to make high-level decisions for them because they're in the middle of their contest preps, they're in their growth seasons. Like they need me to be functioning fully, right? So maybe I don't make like so many snap decisions with them. Like I sit back sometimes and I have to reflect on, all right, like what would be the best decision to make for this particular client in this particular situation. I don't want to make snap decisions. I want to be able to think them through. So maybe my response time is slightly delayed a little bit, but that allows me just to sit back and think a little bit. And by a delayed response time, I mean like a couple minutes than I usually would, like banging out an email and send it. But I just want to make sure that I'm thinking clearly because I don't want my brain fogginess or prep brain to negatively affect them. And I feel like me having to concentrate on that actually helps my mental capacity because it keeps me sharp. In my past contest preps, I didn't have as many clients, or I actually had no clients because I wasn't coaching anybody when I was younger, obviously. And I would just sit there and think about my own contest prep 24/7. And I think that actually had a negative effect on me because I just wasn't putting my mind anywhere else. So one other thing that I will say, and then we're going to cover the last one briefly, even though a lot of us already know it. One thing I will say is like contest prep actually would be a great time to pick up an additional hobby. Now, I don't necessarily do that. I don't necessarily have the time to do that. But if you have the time and like, let's say you like wanted to learn the guitar, or you wanted to pick up crocheting, or you wanted to learn how to play the piano, or you just wanted to, I don't know, whatever. Just pick up a new hobby. So once again, it takes your mind off of what's going on with the contest prep itself, because that way, like, you're just not fixated on your contest prep diet, you're not fixated on your training. That's just one way to help break through like the mental fogginess, at least in my book. And Connor, I did see that you had a comment here. She gets way more stressed about the tiniest things during prep. I never found that prep brain stuff too bad. I found my ability to deal with stress goes way down. Yes, absolutely. So obviously with like cortisol levels, they're through the roof when we're in contest prep. And I agree, Connor, all the time. And I didn't want to have to deal with having a shit phone during contest prep. So I told my wife the other day, I'm like, look, I'm upgrading this before I throw it through the wall because you just can't handle little stuff like that. The last thing that I do want to talk about, and then we'll wrap up this video, guys, because I am trying to keep these as high of quality as possible. I'm trying to be mentally alert as possible for these videos, so I'm going to keep them roughly under 30 minutes, and we're at the 25-minute mark right now. But the last one I wanted to talk about, and this is to help my mental fogginess, is to remember this shit. Little notes here, boom. Is hormone levels going down. It's an inevitability. Obviously, for natural athletes, we are not supplementing our hormones. So they're gonna downregulate, right? It's a natural process. My testosterone level is dropping. I can guarantee that. Did I get it tested? No. I really don't want to know what my testosterone level is, because that's, in my mind, it'll only make me feel worse if I know that how low it is getting. I don't assume it's crazy low right now, because I'm not that deep into prep. I mean, I guess I'm like 27 weeks into prep, so that's long in some people's books. But regardless, I feel like my hormones are still okay. We had a whole topic, weekly Wednesday video, maybe like 6-7 weeks ago, all about hormones and stuff like that. So if you want more information on that, go back and watch that one. It is on my YouTube account. But this is one of the inevitabilities, right? So I mean, like my testosterone, for men, your testosterone level is going to go down. That's another thing that might negatively affect your muscle mass, right? So if your testosterone level goes down, we know we're not gaining any new muscle, and it's harder to keep muscle when your testosterone level goes down. All those things, negatively affect our sleep. We talked before about pituitary function and thyroid function, and those also go down during contest prep, and that's something that literally you can't control. Like, there's nothing you can supplement to control your pituitary or your thyroid. There are some like natural test boosters that you could take for your testosterone, but even if you're supplementing with that, which I am, like, it's still gonna go down. I mean, mine might be higher than your average person who's not on it, but it's still gonna go down no matter how many test boosters you're running. And guys, like, I've literally been on a test booster since day one of my contest prep, and even before that. Like, I'm cycling a different test booster every single 8 weeks, on and off, on and off, on and off, on and off. I'm gonna be on a test booster until, like, I have my schedule planned out. My schedule changed a little bit, can't really say why, because I'm gonna be on one till like March. Like, I have my supply, and I'm just gonna keep rotating them so my testosterone level is boosted. And you think, why is he gonna be on one until March? Well, because like after your show, like I said, like your testosterone level is lower. So post show, I still want to be on one as well, even though my testosterone level will still be on the rise, because I do want to maximize my post show period. And Jeff said he's about to hit up Liberty Balls. Yeah, dude, Liberty Balls sends me flying off the wall. I get really mad when I'm on Liberty Balls. I just started court test actually today, so I'm calm. But God help me when I go to start Liberty Balls. You better watch out. But guys, so let's just wrap it up here a little bit. We talked about the inevitabilities of our contest prep. Just to review, injuries, muscle loss, weakness, poor sleep, hunger, irritability, mental clarity, fatigue, poor recovery, lowered hormones. I mean, these are all things that we can try to fight, but it's one of those things that you can fight as much as you can, but at the end of the day, it's going to go down. So hopefully you guys don't beat yourself up about these things. If you feel like you're going through them in your current contest prep, just know that they don't last forever, and there are some ways to fight it, but they will most likely go down, or you will feel these effects at some point during your contest prep. So as always, guys, I appreciate you tuning in, and until next week, keep dominating every aspect. And I'll see if I can end these videos at the same time. No, I can't, because I got two going on. All right, guys, have a great night.